session we're going to look at around how we resource our heritage, thinking about that crucial funding mix, public, private, and different ways for us to fundraise and income generate for our organisations. And after our panel discussion, we will break into a couple of groups where we're going to look at discussing tourism and heritage and the opportunities there, as well as looking at how we can work with capital projects. And we do have a couple of funding surgeries, but I've only got maybe one more space for those if anybody is interested. So at the end, for the people who are in the tourism and heritage, please stay here and come as far forward as you can. For the capital one, meet me at the back, and we may have another space to take you to. So thank you all very much. I'm going to pass over to Andrew Mackenzie, who is board member at MHH, also the Highland Historian, and he is going to lead this panel and introduce our other panelists.
Thank you very much. So I've been flung in at the deep end with very short notice to chair the panel, so I'm going to be very relaxed about the way I chair this. And hopefully we're going to have some very good questions from the audience here. This is a very good opportunity to speak about resourcing our heritage. And we have Katie from Glencoe, we have Gillian from MGS, and Megan from National Lottery Heritage Fund here to speak to us. So what I'm going to do first of all is ask each of you to take 5 or 6 minutes just to introduce yourselves. And then I'll introduce a bit about myself as well, because as I've been speaking to people, they've been saying, "Oh, you're a Highland historian, you're that guy." And then there's a bit of a question about what I actually do. So that's always good. So I'll take a bit of time to introduce myself before we go through a question for the panel to have a think about. And then we'll turn to the floor for questions from the floor as well. So if we can start with Katie, if possible. Oh, sorry, I should have gone the opposite way, but there we go.
Hello everyone, my name is Katie Mullen, and yes, I am the fundraiser at Glencoe Museum. I've been working there a couple of days a week since October, so still fairly new and very new considering this sector. So you may know we are about to, or in the process of undergoing a huge redevelopment project. Thank you very much to our funders. Although my role isn't totally focused on that, it's maybe focused more on kind of fundraising and income generation beside that, and kind of more into the long-term future. So my background isn't actually in heritage, it's my first heritage post, so please don't ask me anything too heritage-based, I probably won't know the answer. My background is in the charity sector as a whole. So I've worked for various small Scottish charities who, like Glencoe Folk Museum, are in the very early stages of kind of diversifying their income streams, or maybe they're just a very new charity altogether. So I'm kind of looking to help Glencoe find lots of different ways to generate income and really find new target markets. So if we take people that give you money, individual givers. So rather than trust, maybe the kind of individual that wants to give you money, up to like a few £100s a year, you're obviously always going to have the very dedicated people who will just give you money because they think you're brilliant and they really love you. But I'm looking at, well, how can you engage the wider community? So how can you create fundraising products or initiatives that speak to people who they don't maybe love you, but they like you, they know you do a good thing, that's a much wider audience. So what can you do that kind of gives something back to them that's a bit more than just that kind of fuzzy feel-good thing, and how do we raise more money that way? And just to kind of sign off, I think what I'd encourage you all to do is, maybe look to the wider sector, rather than just the heritage sector, go to the charity sector as a whole. There's lots of events like this, like the Gathering, the Scottish Fundraising Conference. If you can get to them, go there, because there's lots of ideas that you'll be able to take from organisations that are very different from yours, but then apply them to your organisation. And if you're not a charity, the same goes for trade shows, social enterprise events. Steal their ideas, steal their kind of commercial methods, and make them your own. Because while this room is fantastic, what works for one museum might not work for you, but actually what works for another charity might really work for you. So yeah, looking forward to getting your questions.
Hello. Madam Va, Ahula Dunya. It's me, Megan. Hello, I'm Megan from the Heritage Fund. I apologise for my bad Gaelic, but as Anna said yesterday, if we don't try the broken Gaelic, then it's going to be Gaelic in a coffin. So I've given it a go as a level 3 Duolingo Gaelic person. So I've been asked to talk to you about the challenges, opportunities and new ideas. But I would be doing you all and us all a disservice if I didn't acknowledge that things are really hard just now. I know you're worried about your museums, about your staff, your volunteers, your collections, and about all of the impact that these are going to have on your communities as well. So I'm just going to talk a wee bit about the support that the Heritage Fund can give you in hard times, and how, even though we're all in the challenging and uncertain times, there are opportunities and new ideas all around us. So we've just launched our new strategy. You might have spotted it. It's called Heritage 2033. It's a 10-year strategy, hence the name. It's quite high level. It's very ambitious. There's not a lot of detail in it. We're working on our delivery plan at the moment, and that should be out in the summer. At the heart of it is 4 investment principles. They are saving heritage, protecting the environment, organisational sustainability, and inclusion, access and participation. And these are what came out from you in the consultation. So guided by these principles, we're going to be building on the work that we've been doing since 1994 to fund the heritage sector. And in that sense, the new funding programmes, when they come out, they're not going to look that different. In fact, they're going to be radically the same as what we're doing, but just with these investment principles to hang the heritage projects around. And that means, hopefully, that it'll be easier for you to tell us your priorities and how we can support you to achieve them. Many of you have applied to our Heritage Emergency Fund over the pandemic, or sought funding to help you get back open after those lockdowns from us, MGS and other funders that were doing the same. We've learned a lot from this type of funding, and the work that we'd been doing before that to try and tackle some of the issues that are prevalent in the heritage sector. We call these types of projects resilience, and I know that resilience is a bit jargony, it's a bit of an all-encompassing term, but what it really means is that we are supporting projects that are trying to make things more sustainable for organisations and look at areas that you can grow or change into, or for many of you at the moment, I know it's simply about trying to keep the doors open. But we're also here to help you think about how you might do things differently. And as we all collectively move from adversity to innovation, we're here to assist you on that daunting journey. So for example, you might want to try out new skills or bring new skills into your organisation or workforce. You might want to create a community shares offer, or you might try out engaging new audiences in different ways. And on a less glamorous note, but very vital, we've also funded governance reviews. They're very exciting things. They're really hard to get up and running. I know people are probably sitting there going, but they're really important, particularly if you're looking at how you keep your direction for your organisation, or if you want to take it in a new direction. I've advised on quite a few, and I would say all of them have ended up being really, really worthwhile at the end of it. But yesterday's presentations, other than the Gaelic, also got me thinking, and while we're in these hard times, I'm still really inspired by you and the museum sector in general. You're tackling these challenges head on, you're refusing to bow to the pressure, and we are seeing so much good in our sector, so I wanted to talk about that a wee bit as well. Since 2020, I've seen more community-centred projects than I can shake a stick at. Communities as a whole have discovered how much they value their local people, their local heritage, and their local place, and this comes through in the applications we're seeing. We know that they take a lot of support, and those of you who work with communities know that the fun of the local capacity and local bureaucracy can be, but for us and for you guys, for small amounts of money, there can be a huge societal and society impact from these groups. This sense of pride and connection is such a key part of the Highlands, and we would love to keep exploring this with you. There's also a positive trend in heritage folks just quietly getting on with doing the necessary stuff. So that's making collections accessible, going bi or trilingual with your interpretation, engaging those new audiences who never normally come to your door, doing the decolonisation and human rights stuff with your collections and audiences, and even embracing innovative digital approaches. I am completely blown away and inspired by all of this. This is the future of the museum sector. This is the creativity and innovation that we know and we love you for. And as a top tip, we love to fund. So while we're here for you doing all that necessary stuff, just to keep going, we're also going to keep being here for you doing the exciting stuff as well. So I'm here for the rest of today. I'm here on the panel to answer questions, but you can also have a look at our website for more details and contact details and to get in touch. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm most nervous about actually managing to speak into the microphone, so just wave at me if I wonder, because I use my hands a lot, so I might be doing this. So I'm Gillian from Museums Gallery Scotland, where I am the head of museum development. And Museums Gallery Scotland, I think most of you are familiar with, but we're the development body for all museums in Scotland. To update you on our recent activity, in February we launched the new strategy for Scotland's museums and galleries. Not MGS's strategy, the strategy for museums and galleries, which I hope many of you were part of developing. And that strategy has been developed very much in the context of the difficult situation we find ourselves in, and we highlighted that at the beginning of the strategy, the really tough financial circumstances that we're in, the very pressing climate emergency that none of us can afford to ignore, and the realisation that it's becoming clearer and clearer that we need to become more inclusive organisations, a more inclusive sector, if we are to remain relevant. So the strategy tries to outline what we, as a sector, feel are the areas that we should be focusing on in the next 7 years. It's a 7-year strategy, not 10, not 5, 7, to take us neatly to 2030. So collections sit at the very heart. That's what makes us museums. But around that and intertwined around that, we have identified 3 strands. I think I'm working with the microphone, nobody's waved at me yet. Resilience is the first of those, which Megan has always said is challenging, but within that we're talking about financial resilience, having the money that you need. And so much of that is about having good governance. Being able to respond to the climate emergency and working collaboratively. And then the second strand is workforce, so making sure that we have a workforce that is skilled to tackle these challenges and confident in doing so. And that means having a more diverse workforce as well. And a workplace that is good to work in, that is a fair place to work. And then the third strand is about, we called it connection, but it's really about maximising the potential of the collections for people. So people are pretty much at the heart of the strategy as well. So the opportunity that collections present for all people to be engaging with culture and for lives to be improved through that. So that's a very sort of quick run-through summary of how the strategy looks. As MGS, as the museum development body, we receive most of our funding from the Scottish Government, and a large chunk of that funding that we receive is to give straight out to museums. So we are a funder. And so what we've done is we have tried to basically say all that stuff that we've just identified as the things that we think we should all be focusing on, we will fund you to do anything that has an impact in those areas. We've narrowed it down to 6 grant outcomes, which we think encapsulate that. But we've also said there are things that we expect of organisations that we fund. We expect you to be working to reduce your environmental impact. We expect you to be a fair work employer. We expect you to be working towards becoming more inclusive. What are the other 2? I've got them written down in case I forget. We expect you to be aiming for sustainable strategic development and to be working collaboratively wherever possible. So everybody's at a different point on that journey, but these are principles that we expect you to be working towards. So I was asked to be on the panel, I think partly because we are a funder and to give you that sort of insight, but I speak also as the development body, and I just wanted to share a few things in terms of that, looking at the opportunities and challenges. The challenges are great. I was counting it up again the other day. In the 2020 and 2021, we received nearly £12 million from the government to give out to the sector, compared to the usual between 1.2 and 1.5 million that we normally get each year. And that's what we're back to, and it's not looking like improving. So it is a challenging situation. And so in light of that, I wanted to mention 5 things that we observe and I think we want to help you with. One is, we think it's really important that you understand your finances. And I know that sounds silly, but it's something, because we were working much more closely with museums around their finances through COVID, finances are really difficult, and none of us are in museums because we love finances. Well, hopefully some of us are, but understanding what money you have and when that money's going to run out, so the basic skills around having a cash flow, so that you know when you're going to get into crisis. And if that's something that you don't have the skills on your board for or within your staff, please talk to us about it. There are templates we can help you with. So know your financial situation. And moving on from that, business planning is so important. Knowing what your priorities are and keep looking at them in the changing context in which we operate, so that you are spending your money on the right things, but also so that you have the confidence to spend your money. Because one thing we saw through COVID was a lot of museums coming to us and saying, we really need help. And when we looked at the finances, they actually had very, very healthy reserves. The reality is that a very small handful of museums in Scotland are rolling in money. So I'm not saying you're all fine, I'm not saying that at all. But sometimes we did wonder why some organisations were not spending some of their reserves. And I think if you've got a really good business plan, you know what your priorities are, it does give you the confidence to spend the money to improve. Sorry, I'm not going to go on too long. Okay, my 3 points, and I'll do them briefly so we can come back to them. Know your value, what you have to offer. I think this is Katie's point, is what you're contributing. You may be very passionate about the collections, but how are you improving lives through that? Just know that stuff, be able to talk about it, because that's what funders want to hear about. What we've noticed is that museums that have done most well in terms of post-COVID recoveries are those that have really tapped into their local audiences, that know them. Organisations that put on activities over Christmas that they know local people want to come to and that they can make a little bit of money for. So know your local audiences and know how to market to them. And as Museums Galleries Scotland, we have been doing marketing surgeries recently. So I think they've come to an end just now, but we can. I'm sure that if there's demand for that, there's always advice available basically from Museums Galleries Scotland on that. And then my 5th point is be inclusive. Ian. Sorry, Ian. This is something you mentioned, and we've all got to be thinking about this. How do we remain relevant? We are not going to be resilient if we don't remain relevant. So look at your visitors. Who is not there, and how are you going to teach them? And we can talk to you about that as well.
Thank you very much. So I'll be very brief about my introduction, then I'll come around with a question, and then we'll go to the floor. So I'd like to thank Anna again for her talk yesterday on the Gaelic and museums, and that's something that resonated very, very strongly with me. So again, broken Gaelic is better than dead Gaelic. So Ismisha, Andrew Mackenzie, Vikian, Vicdavid, Vikian, Vikunik, Vikunik, Vikalian. My name is Andrew Mackenzie, but that Gaelic name is my ancestry all the way back to the late 1700s. And the reason I think that's important, and those that watched the Duachas film with me last night will know that I was a complete fanboy of the film, and I had a great opportunity to walk with Andy into the town afterwards as well and have a really good discussion about this. Duachas is something that really drives me, that connection to my ancestry and all the stories, all the weaknesses, all the struggles of my ancestors. And it does not pass me by that each of the ancestors I mentioned had to move because of economic reasons, okay? So that kind of feeds into what we're talking about here. And I myself found myself having to make similar decisions because Vami manager Ershon Urish Nashantana Halabet Arak Fala Kolodith. I was the manager at Culloden Battlefield, and my career ended rather suddenly. And I was left thinking, how do I maintain my professional interests and also my personal interests in Highland culture to develop that forward? And so that's why Hami Yolaka Yaktri na Gaeltacht. I set up Highland Historian, which is a heritage consultancy and bespoke tour guiding business. Tour guiding was initially going to be the way I paid the bills, but actually my personal private tours that I gave are becoming much less the moneymaker. and it's actually research projects that are taking over. So it's keeping my research interests alive, which has led to interaction with some museums both within the Highlands and also outside the Highlands, particularly a local museum who I volunteered with on the Inverloch, and that was an amazing 2 years where it really expanded my knowledge of how history, academic research and archaeology can work together, and the positivity like that, but also the funding issues that go into a massive project like that, which Siobhan, absolutely fantastic, and the development, and Helen as well, yes, the development of that project was absolutely phenomenal, real best practice example, so a good opportunity to see how that was done. And that, for me, has also developed my social goals of my business as well. Can what I'm doing fund things in the future? And I'm a long, long way for that. Surviving COVID in business was difficult, but my aim is definitely there. So this is a lifelong aim, and that's what it's all about. So this year I'm now working with Royal Scotsman, the train company, to bring high-value tourists to the Highlands, and also working with Royal Scotsman to tweak the way that they do things to ensure that money is going to positive things within the Highlands as well. And that's a future discussion that I'm involved in currently. So there is very much commercial aspects to what I'm talking about there, economic aspects. How do I sustain myself, let alone sustain all the ideologies I have that are within what I'm trying to do as well? So, back to the questions and the point of the panel. I'd like to ask first Katie, from a museum perspective and from trying to find the funds, what was the biggest challenge that you've come across, and how do you get over that challenge? Because with museums, we often struggle with resources, time, the admin time. Is any of that something that you found the real difficulty, and how did you get over those difficulties, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all difficulties that have fortunately been kind of solved by having me doing it myself, or be focusing on fundraising, which I know that isn't something that all museums can do. So what I would say, kind of in the respect of admin and resources and that sort of thing, is that if you are not a fundraiser but responsible for it in your organisation, it's a simple matter of maybe dedicating half a day a week to actually doing fundraising. But that's probably not the biggest challenge that I found. The biggest challenge that I found is helping people understand that we need money. So helping people understand that we are a charity and that we do need funds and that we do need donations. So my kind of initial job, or part of my initial job, I feel, is actually educating the public, the community, that we need funds. And the best way to do that is just to really shout about any fundraising initiatives that you have. So talk about the fact that you need donations, explain why you need donations. Don't assume that people know, I need money to keep this going. Really lay it down in really obvious and accessible terms, whether it's through blogs or social media, in talks. If you do get anybody that makes a donation, shout about it. And if you, I think as well, diversifying the ways that people can support you and really making that and marketing that. So it's all about marketing and telling people about that. And over time, people will start to realise, actually, the museum does need money. It's not a case of I just go in and I pay, my £3 entry fee. We all know that doesn't cover costs. And actually, just being, I think, being upfront with people, telling people, yes, we charge you £3. You might not know this, but actually, that's kind of, not, I would say, a subsidised rate. And actually, we really need a lot more than that if we want to keep going. We want to keep the cost low so that there's no barrier to entry, particularly if you're a free museum. But say to people, look, if you can afford to do a bit more, we would love to get you, we would love your support. But, like I said earlier, not everybody's going to give you a donation just because they really love you. So it's about thinking, right, how do we engage other people? Could we run a prize draw? Can we do a lottery? Can we do an event that's a bit more kind of general community? And that's a way of kind of encouraging people who might not just give a standard donation to actually give you money, because they're getting something out of it, whether that's the chance to win something or the chance to experience something really awesome. And sometimes you can do it. It doesn't have to be, for events. It doesn't have to be an entry fee. You can also ask people kind of a bit like they do at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. They you go along to the shows, and often they're free. But at the end of it, people say, look, if you thought this was worthwhile, can you give me a few pounds? You can do that in so many different things throughout the museum, whether it's your oral histories, a blog you put up. So when you put up a blog, ask people for money and say, look, if you got something out of this blog, could you donate even just a couple of pounds so that we can keep doing this? So it's really about being a bit inventive about the ways you ask for money and doing it more often than you think you need to, tying your ass into the other work you do. And I think that will, over time, help you get over that barrier of people seeing you as a charity and in need of funds, I would say.
Excellent. So, Megan, you spoke about the strategy and the 10-year vision, and there may be many people here, there will be many people here that have interacted with you already. How do you think, or what would be the main issues around communicating that strategy and making sure that strategy is understood by people that are going to come back to you? And is there quite a lot of legwork for the organisation to do in order to do that? Or is it hopeful that there will be kind of two-way interaction to ensure that happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're quite a small team in Scotland. I do know quite a lot of you. You probably know us and our name as well. There's only 20 of us in Scotland. There's only 4 people doing 3 jobs in my engagement team, and we cover the whole of Scotland. And we love you. And we come out and about when we can. We come to things like this, but we also try and do lots of stuff on our website and on our social media. And we've not done enough of them, but we need to do more things like webinars and start using digital technology to our advantage as well. That said, it has made it easier for us to have those quick conversations I know a lot of people want to have with funders. So quite a lot of the time we'll get messages saying, I just want to know a wee bit more about this. Are we eligible? Does this work? And those quick conversations, that half an hour on Teams or on the phone, if we all still use phones, everybody just uses Teams now, don't we? That half an hour on Teams can mean that we can just debunk some of the myths that you've maybe built up in your head. And actually quite a lot of my job is matchmaking. So it might be saying, that's a really good idea. Do you know there's a similar thing going on in the borders? Would you like to go and, would you like the contact details of those people? And buy them some virtual biscuits or a virtual coffee or donate some money to their blog. And they'll probably chat to you for an hour about how it works really well, and then come back to us with that project, and it'll be stronger, and you'll feel more confident about what you're doing because you know it's worked somewhere else. So that's one of the things that I want to do. The strategy is quite high level at the moment. I think it'll probably remain that way until maybe the end of the summer, and then you'll start to see more details. But I still think there's such richness in talking to the communities, talking to you guys, talking to the sectors, and really understanding what the issues are that you're dealing with. So I suppose it's more just keep in touch, get in touch with us, and we're here to help.
Excellent. And Gillian, so the thing that I noticed through COVID, particularly as an independent business person, but also in conjunction with Museums Heritage Highland, is that it offered an opportunity, which I think we've all taken up on very well, to connect more through social media, through Zoom, through Teams, through various things like that. And MGS really led the way with a lot of conferences as well that I came to, and there were some very good things going on there. Do you see, now that we're coming out of the COVID period and out of that period where that interconnectivity, there's the space and the time for that, because we're now focused on day-to-day activities in person? Do you see any issues with the way that you interact with people and how people access your funding with that, or do you think there will be more face-to-face meetings coming forwards? It's kind of a question on technology and how it really goes into your strategy and your plans going forwards.
Interesting. Megan is so right. I don't think I've phoned anybody in a long time. it is all Teams, but we're so used to it now, and I think we will continue to do that. So I think it's, as Megan said, it's always a case of if you want to talk to us, if you've got any questions, do contact us, please. And we love to talk to you and we love to hear from you, but we do find so much value in actually coming and seeing your circumstances. It's so much easier for us to understand. So there is certainly an intention on our part to come out and about much more as we can. We have limited capacity, but we want to come and see you. So please do invite us, I would say.
Yep, excellent.
Okay, we have a short amount of time, about 15 minutes, to open to the floor, so I think we'll have a roving mic, if that's okay. So if you do wish to ask any questions to the panel, just raise your hand.
Hi, Alan from University of St Andrews, and as the session is on kind of resourcing heritage and resourcing museums, I just really wanted to comment that it's really valuable for myself and the universities to engage with museums, and also I think that we can bring some resources to that we have like students who are interested in doing projects, also organisations like Scholar Funding Council and the European Union, we can apply into money as partnership with museums. So I don't know if you have any comments on maybe the activities and pitfalls of museums and universities working together.
I think there's so many positives. I think we've seen some of the examples yesterday that you talked about. We've seen lots of different things. So we cover all the heritage, not just museums. We've seen lots around natural heritage and things where there's been fantastic projects looking at Scotland's coastline and dolphins and whales. We've seen lots of archaeology projects at the University of Aberdeen. What I would say is the partnership works really well where we identify the roles and the skills that both partners can bring to it. So it is around that research and access to students and support for them, but also acknowledging the community skills that their museum partners will bring and their access and their support for those communities and the people that they know really well. And so you're making it more than a research project, making it a real people project is what we've seen the benefits of, and that we would really love to keep funding.
Yeah, I was going to say we recognise the need for much more sort of collaboration, so we're very, very positive about it. There's two things that I would say. One is, and I don't say this in relation at all to you, Alan, because you've been around a long time and very much a supporter of the sector, but there is just that element of a university coming in and working with a museum, the project's finished and they move away and go on. So it's just making sure that they leave the museum equipped to continue the good work that they've done together. And then the other thing I would say is also, for some museums, there's potential for it to feel like the university potentially knows everything. So it is that point that Megan is saying about it being very much a collaboration, and that written into the way that the partnership is set up to start with. And it's one of the reasons why, well, we can only give our money to museums, but it is always our preference in a partnership that the money goes to the museum, so that there is that we're hearing from the museum and not from the university. So they maybe sound very negative, but yeah, we think it's a really positive thing.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Just in the front. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
would you like to say
that?
No, sorry.
Gillian, a question to you, but more broadly also for sort of major funders. So during the pandemic, MGS removed the requirement for you to have accreditation to apply for some of the grants. And I myself, through UK accreditation, I'm conflicted about that because I really am a big flag waver for accreditation, but at the same time I know that it can be an additional barrier to access funding. So I just wondered whether there are any either plans to continue that, and if I've missed the announcement, I apologise, or are there any other ways we can remove those barriers that stop people from applying for funding in first instances? Like match funding, that's another big bugbear of mine as well. So.
Thanks, Tamsin. I felt like I was clear on the question and then expanded out very again. So I'll answer the question on accreditation. So the situation is that the reality is we have a lot less money to give out, and therefore we have had to, where we were open to non-accredited museums, we have to now say that our money is primarily there for accredited museums, and that's just a practical issue. There's not enough money to go around, and there have to be some ways in which we narrow it down, I guess. But that is not to say we learned so much more about the sector being able to open up to non-accredited museums, and we don't like having to close it down. So please don't take that as a sort of value judgment or anything like that. I think what we would like to see is, and what we can do is we can support museums to work in partnership. We're very supportive of the forums, and are delighted that encompasses the non-accredited museums as well. So we hope that can bring some benefit there. But we continue to talk to the government about that. We need more money if we're to be able to open up to non-accrediteds again. We do know that accreditation is not for everybody. But if you are working towards accreditation, if you've gone through that process of saying this is something we want to do and we've been declared eligible for accreditation, there is a bit of money that you can access if you want to. But that is the situation.
That was it.
Sorry.
Do you want me to do a match? I can talk a wee bit about match funding if that's
Perfect.
So I completely get it, it's a bugbear. I'm not here to defend match funding, but at the same time, similar to NGS, there's a bit of trying to make your money go further, and also seeing that buy-in. So sometimes if you see that project that comes in and they've asked for 100%, I think, did you try? And actually, the trying can be just as valuable as the match funding. We want to know that you've asked the right people, so you've not just come in with a museum project and not bothered chatting to MGS, because the buy-in that we get from the funding that goes to your project from MGS shows that you're going in the right direction. We're not a development body. We have expertise around heritage, but we don't have their expertise around museums. And we like to kind of, there's that sort of connection in. So similarly with built heritage, natural heritage and things. Match funding for us can also be in-kind support, so particularly if you're looking at sort of smaller, medium-sized projects, don't underestimate your volunteer hours going into a project, or the fact that the council have no money. Councils have very little money at the moment, but they might be able to give you a space, or they might be able to give you some time for their curator, and that counts as well. That's support, that's that buy-in. And I suppose it maybe ties into Katie as well, around that sort of the philanthropy element as well, and sort of local buy-in. Do you want to speak a wee bit about that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that one of the most important things, if you're going in for trusts and grants, don't just do that. Your match funding can be things like you have a lottery, or you have people that donate every month, or you run events. I mean, I think you'll agree that trusts and foundations love to see all the different ways that you're raising funds, and maybe they're only raising a few £100, a few £1,000 a year, but it's showing that you're putting in that effort. And the benefits of that type of funding is generally it's not restricted. So you can say, well, I'm raising money by doing this event, I'm raising money, and all of that can count as match funding for all of your kind of different projects, because you can really use it anywhere you want. So I think it's vital to definitely show that diversity, and showing that you're going to lots of different target markets, businesses, kind of the community, high net worth individuals, and that you're asking lots of different people. I think the other thing is, when it comes to, if you're finding you're kind of up against the wall and things like match funding, or another big similar one is getting trust funders to give you poor funding, is actually feedback to the funders, because you can kind of sit there and get frustrated and read it all online. But it's all people that work for these organisations, and they really do want to help in the best way possible. So if you're applying for a fund, I mean, I've seen it happen many times. A fund has maybe done an application process in a certain way. Lots of different fundraisers have fed back to them and said, look, that didn't work. The application process didn't work, or the criteria wasn't right, and they have gone ahead and changed it the following year. So I would just say, if you don't think it's right, tell them, because they want to know, and if you don't tell them, they'll never know. So.
Do you have any more questions? Yep, excellent.
Hi there. It was really to look at the funding strategies. So during COVID, we of the need requirement for it not to be core funding obviously was dropped, and all funders took that into account during that time. And while I don't think anybody's really expected that to continue afterwards, has it come into either MGS or Heritage Lottery Fund's future strategies to think about having a section of funding to help with core funding in the future?
I'll go first, and I'll be brutally honest. No, because we can't. The lottery's been set up that it is in addition to any statutory duties of an organisation, and it went through Parliament almost 30 years ago. And that's a bit of a pain, but at the same time, I feel that there's an added benefit of having an organisation like the National Lottery Heritage Fund to do the projects that are over and above your day-to-day. And part of that is, if we had to start funding core funding, we wouldn't fund a lot. We wouldn't get out to do nearly so many, we wouldn't see a lot of innovation in the sector. We wouldn't, I think it would probably stagnate quite a lot. What we like to see is sort of trying to push that sort of sustainability and thinking about the skills that you need. So how can you help sort of mainstream those innovative projects that we've helped you fund the first couple of years, and then thinking, right, how does this keep going? And sort of having those conversations and trying out different things. And actually, it's okay for projects to not work. So if you want to try something and it doesn't quite it's not quite a success, there's still learnings in that as well. So that's also quite good. But I know that's a tough message, so I apologise for that. But at the same time, think of us as the lottery in terms of like, woohoo, you won something, and we can get to do something fun with that money.
Should I have a go? Yeah. There isn't enough money. I mentioned the figures there, the difference in the amount of funding we had when we were able to open it up to what there is now. Who would get the core funding from that tiny amount of money that there is? So in that context, we have to focus on development work that will help you to work towards that position. And we know museums are not profitable. You're never going to be completely self-sufficient, but it's helping you. We have to focus on the limited funding that we have on the development work.
The only other thing I would say in that is, if you build your core funding into every project, I mean, I see a lot of charities not doing this, but every single time you apply for funding, unless the funder says definitely don't, put in overheads, put in a contribution to fundraising costs. There's no reason that you can't apply for funding for a project and use that money to get a freelance fundraiser and to help fund that and future projects. You have to be clever about it. So if you have maybe 3 or 4 different projects, ideally there should be enough scope in there to cover a really high percentage of your core costs if you're smart about how you do your budgeting, is my thought.
Excellent. So we've got just a couple of minutes, so we've got one last question, and we'll keep the answers brief, but hopefully the answers can then go into conversations over lunch as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on that kind of giving it a go attitude, how do you hold an organisation to account once the money's spent? How do you assess the success or lack of success? And where does it go once that decision or that opinion is formed?
So it's something that we're working on at the moment is trying to get better about what we're expecting in terms of reporting at the end of a project. So being really clear at the beginning of the project, this is why we funded it, and this is what you think is going to be the result of that, and this is how we want you to tell us about it. But really we just want to hear what actually happened, because we do trust you. And as Megan said, if it doesn't work, that's okay. There's learning in that, not just for you as an organisation, but for us. So holding to account, we need to know that you spent the money in the way that you said you would, but you can't determine the outcome if you've done it in the best way. So we just want to hear what happened as a result. It's development funding. We need to look at what's coming out of that development. Does that answer the question?
It's trying to establish what the feedback loop is, I suppose.
Sure.
So then, like I said, an organisation can learn, but then does that change your funding criteria next time?
Yes. I think this is why we're so keen that people actually tell us what's not working for them and what hasn't worked in their project, because we do absorb all of that information, and it really informs how we then advise people who are coming forward with something similar. And as Megan said, we do try and connect people. If we know somebody's done a project over here and they have certain learning from it, we try to put that learning out through case studies, through our Connect and so on. So yeah, we try and make it learning for us in terms of our processes, but also share that more widely.
I'd agree. I think within our projects we try and encourage people to talk, so best practice guidance comes out of it so they can share their learnings from that as well. We do get evaluation forms and reports at the end of the projects. I know you all have written them. They're a tricky one because I don't know if they're a true reflection of the actual project. I think quite a lot of the time you get what people think the funders want to hear. You get everything's rosy, and actually there's a lot of learning in the non-rosy stuff that we as a funder could be better at pulling out and having those conversations. And you're right, Gillian, there's something about, as we know, the more we know, the more we come out and speak and hear about things that have gone really well, but things that have been tricky, the better we can support future projects. And in terms of like development of guidelines and things, we consult with the sector, but we also consult with our staff and whatever we're doing. And we're on the ground and we're able to speak to you and able to say, do you know what, this isn't working, or this needs to change. So if you're really geeky enough to watch our labyrinth of a website, you'll see tweaks all over the place, and that's me and my team kind of going, yeah, this isn't hitting, this isn't working. Or someone told us that this was really, really rubbish, so we're sort of changing how we're doing things. And I've got oodles of notes from the last couple of days from here as well, so thank you for that.
Suppose a similar question for private funding as well.
So yeah, the similar question for private funding. Do people then come to you in 10 years down the line and say, what was the impact of the money I gave you?
I think the thing about that is actually, no, you have to be very proactive in doing that with them, because they just won't come back and they just won't give you money again. So you have to really actively keep in touch with all your past donors and sponsors and get them to come in, invite them to events, because it's much easier to get somebody who's donated before to donate again than it is to recruit new donors. So yeah, just get them along. If you can get them into your museum and to see what you're doing and build that emotional connection, that's the best way to do it. You maybe don't need to give them the same kind of level of stats as you would, but tell them a story. I mean, I think that the best thing maybe to do is actually get a volunteer or somebody who's benefited from the museum to speak to them, or do a video for you, use that emotional connection, and not only will they be really happy with what you've done with their money, they'll probably give you more.
Okay,
So just to close up there, I think there's a lot of discussion there that will continue after the workshop sessions that we're going to have just now. Some very good things being said there. Obviously strategy is changing and things are developing all the time. The key message I'm hearing here is to keep the communication lines open, and also to keep communication lines with people that have funded in the past and may fund again in the future very open as well. And the other thing I'm hearing is there's a lot of experience here as well, and there's a lot of experience in the room of the challenges and how to get over those challenges in finding funding and accessing these funds as well. So hopefully that's got us all thinking about our own specific projects and how we can develop those forwards. So thank you very much to the panel for that, and thank you to the audience for the questions. Thank you.